Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. Lots of big stories that we want to talk to you about this morning. First of all, the New York Times actually forced to admit that our sanctions on Russia have completely backfired. Their word is boomeranged. So they have some new numbers there that are pretty interesting. We also had some primaries this week down in Georgia and Alabama. A little bit of tea leaves, reading some contradictory indicators about the state of the Republican Party and Trump and all of that stuff. And also, this was pretty stunning. Ron DeSantis actually ahead of Trump in a new New Hampshire theoretical primary poll. So we will break that down for you. Also some other interesting moves on DeSantis's part. I can't believe we continue to learn more and more horrifying details about just what occurred in the Uvalde massacre. The very latest news is that that chief of the school police unit has actually been asked to step aside for now. Finally, I don't know what took so long. So we've got the details there. Also an interesting moment from Elizabeth Warren, of all people, kind of calling out the Fed and really in a very succinct way demonstrating how limited what the Fed is going to be able to do in order to get inflation under control and get our economy back to where we would all ultimately like it to be. And then we've got some interesting thoughts from MSNBC on gas prices.
Yes.
But we wanted to start, Saagar, drum roll. We finally have the date.
It's finally happening. The date, the announcement, the link. It's all over, people. After I've gone to war for all of you. We're coming to Atlanta, Center Stage Theater, Atlanta, September 16th, 7:30 p.m. Okay, so here's how it's going to work. As we promised, the pre-sale is going live today. It will be in your email. There'll be a Ticketmaster link, and we're going to give you a password. You have to be a premium member for the first week in order to be able to buy tickets. If you're a lifetime member, here's how it's going to work, just to make sure that the seating and all of that works out properly. Go ahead and buy tickets, send us an email, we'll refund the cost. As we promised, lifetime members get VIP access. I do also want to say, because this is what they've warned me, if you are worried that this is going to be the only show, it is not the case. It is first of many. We have to go through this process and announce on this particular one before we can go ahead and book other venues. So
we sort of have to demonstrate the desire for people to come and see us before we can book other venues.
Yeah, just to give people a peek behind the curtain, venues and other people won't do deals with you unless you can show that you can sell tickets elsewhere. Hence, we were able to get a nice deal with this venue, Center Stage. Thank you, Center Stage, Atlanta. So go ahead, buy tickets, show the world that people can show up for Breaking Points live. It's going to be fun. We're going to have Krystal, me. We're obviously going to have friends, special guest appearances at various different locations. And for those of you who are in other parts of the country, don't worry, we are coming. We have the map, all of that and stuff laid out. So don't worry as if this is the only one. And
this is not your only chance. I am excited about going to Georgia though. Because,
yes, that's part of the reason why it's fun.
Right. We timed it specifically to be, right in the heat of election season and just before some of the biggest races in the country are unfolding in Georgia right now. So to get to go to Atlanta, a city I haven't been to for a hot minute, I'm pretty excited about
I have not been to Atlanta, I believe.
Well, literally never been?
I've never spent time in Atlanta. I've traveled. I've obviously spent time in the airport, but that's basically it.
I started college at Clemson University in South Carolina, and it's not that far from Atlanta. In fact, a lot of times you would fly in and out of Atlanta Airport would be like the cheapest one to fly on. So I spent a bit of time there when I was in college, and I've been back since, but I haven't spent a lot of time there since. So anyway, excited to go down to Georgia.
We're coming to Atlanta. We're coming to other battleground states. We're coming to major metropolises. Don't worry, we are coming. For those of you who are in the area or, whatever, within a couple 100 miles, go ahead and buy tickets, show the world. Like we said, premium subscribers are the people who get the first shot at all ticket sales, not just this one. And for the lifetime members, you guys have guaranteed seats, no matter where, no matter what. As I said, buy the ticket, send us an email, we'll refund you the entire cost. So go ahead and tell us. Yeah, it's going to be exciting. We've been working on this for over a year. We were worried with COVID like a year ago.
The
whole thing.
And think about the last time we did
the very last thing that her and I did was that book show. It was March 2020, I want to say. In retrospect, probably shouldn't have done it. It was like March 19th or something.
It really was. It was in Brooklyn. It really was like the last moment before everything shut down for COVID. And there is no doubt it was circulating the virus so much more widespread than certainly we realized and that much of the country realized at that point. But we got in right under the wire. Had an amazing time. That show, it actually, even though we probably, in retrospect, it was risky to do, We had so many people share with us that was like,
I know.
They really sort of held on to that for a long time because it was the last thing that they did and went out in public and did before everything shut down. So anyway, it's been a lot too long, and we're excited to get back out and get to be face-to-face with people because there really is nothing like that, just like direct human connection.
Oh, I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I love meeting people, and especially like getting everybody together anytime that we were able to do that. It's been 2 years, the show has grown so much. So, I mean, there's so many people who've never even had that opportunity in the last 2 years in order to even just meet us and have fun. And I've been studying other people and how they do live shows and live podcasts. So we've got some fun things planned, I think.
It'll be good.
We had some great innovations in our last one. We're just going to keep building on that. And now we have more production value, and thanks to our premium members and all of that, we can bring in some more people and we can really invest in the show. It's going to be a fun experience. And then just like the New York show, we're going to have the premium subscriber. They're going to be able to vote on all the topics, the stuff that we cover, and a lot of it will be made available on YouTube for everybody at a later date. So don't worry, you're not necessarily going to lose out. And like I said, get excited. If you're in the area, go ahead and buy tickets. We're really excited. Go ahead and tweet it out, post it on Instagram or whatever. We'll retweet it. We'll put it on Instagram, and let's sell this thing out so we can prove to the world that we can also or we can sell some tickets here at Breaking Points.
Indeed.
All right, let's get to the news.
All right, with all of that out of the way, let's get to the show. Go ahead and put this first tear sheet up on the screen from the New York Times. Lo and behold, New York Times even forced to admit, here's the headline here, Western move to choke Russia's oil exports boomerangs, they add in the caveat for now. The subhead here says, with China and India buying the Russian oil shunned by the West in an effort to force an end to the Ukraine invasion, Moscow is earning more now than it did before the war. Okay, let that sink in. You are paying more at the pump, in theory, in part, to punish Putin. In reality, we are punishing ourselves. And because the oil price has spiked to such astronomical levels, his regime, literally making more money from oil and gas than ever before. The Chinese and the Indians have stepped in. They are happy to buy oil at a discount. This is something that we have been covering here.
Yes.
There's another twist, though, that I learned in this article, which is that, you feel like, okay, we've shut Russian oil out of our system. We're not buying any Russian oil. Of course, we're buying Saudi oil and all sorts of other sort of criminal regimes, but put that aside. It turns out even that is not true. Because in particular, they trace to the Indian market. There's a lot of people who are happy to buy that discounted oil in India and resell it to us.
They're transshipping it
at a premium and exploit the arbitrage. So we're not even not buying Russian oil. We're just buying it at a more expensive price. So congratulations to everyone for thinking that this was, a great idea. And again, what we've said from the beginning is a lot of these effects were really predictable. They were really predictable. I mean, you don't have to look back at distant history to see that, first of all, our sanctions regimes have not been effective in terms of, forcing countries to comply with our will. That's number one. Oftentimes, they end up punishing the ordinary citizens of those countries and not the regimes. They end up playing into the hands of those autocratic leaders who can say, hey, your problems aren't with me. Your problems are with the West who wants to destroy you. And that's exactly what has happened here. So it really is, so bad at this point that even the New York Times has to admit it, Saagar.
Yeah, absolutely. And President Biden is actually making a mistake. He is trying to tie the high gas prices directly to the situation in Europe. And he actually framed it that way. He's like, for all the Republicans who are criticizing me, are you saying that we were wrong to stand up to Ukraine or to support Ukraine and stand up to Putin? He's directly tying the two, which could spell big political disaster for him in the future. Let's take a listen to his speech yesterday.
So for all those Republicans in Congress criticizing me today for high gas prices in America, are you now saying we were wrong to support Ukraine? Are you saying we were wrong to stand up to Putin? Are you saying that we would rather have lower gas prices in America and Putin's iron fist in Europe? I don't believe that.
And you know what? If it was actually working, there would be a debate. We could have a debate. Right. I still would be opposed. We've talked about that, but there would be a debate if this was actually, degrading Russia's ability to prosecute this war. That is the opposite, the literal opposite of what is happening. So it's just dishonest at this point to tell the American people like, oh, you're paying high gas prices, but this is helping Ukraine. This is not helping Ukraine. It's not helping us. We've effectively imposed sanctions on our own citizens. And the Russians are laughing at us. We've talked about those comments from Putin previously. I mean, just mocking the Biden administration and their policy. The latest from New York Times, that article we had before, Alexei Miller, who's the head of Gazprom, the Russian energy giant, quipped at an economic conference, the same one that Putin spoke at in St. Petersburg last week, that he bore no ill will against Europe because even as the continent's imports of Russian natural gas fell by, quote, several tens of %, prices rose several-fold. Here's the money quote. Quote, I won't bend the truth if I tell you that we bear no grudge. It's like, we're good.
And here's
you
the
did
thing.
Nothing.
Putin actually spoke last night at the BRICS conference. So for people who don't remember, the BRICS was like a concept made up in 2008. It's like Brazil and Russia, India, and China, as well as some developing countries. And at that, he actually vowed, number one, in order to reroute all Russian exports to BRICS countries, including China and India, the two largest markets, not only oil, but everything else. But number two, and this is even more important, is they are working on a unified currency or type of system in order to be able to trade oil off of the US dollar. So either price it in yen to ruble, in rupee to ruble, and find some medium exchange. So they're moving themselves off of that. They're working to try and create an alternative oil market, which they will unambiguously pay much less in China, India, and as you said, probably just rip us off in the interim. I guess I can't blame them. I would probably do the same thing.
Oh, I don't blame China and India
Yeah,
at all.
I mean,
not at all.
So you put that together, it's not working. As we said, on the battlefield, Ukraine is continuing to suffer. I mean, they are urging people in the east in order to leave. There has been a tremendous amount of civilian and military casualties. We don't know what the Russian casualties are. We do know that many of these cities remain besieged and that overall the military picture for Ukraine is not good. So on the battlefield, things are not working out. I do again want to present the counter argument, and this is what everybody says. Yeah, but in 2 or 3 years, the Russian oil business is going to really suffer because they won't be able to get the parts that they need. And my response to that would be, okay, so number one, are we supposed to pay $5 a gallon for 2 to 3 years in order to secure the integrity of eastern Ukraine? Because that seems kind of crazy. Number two is that in 2 to 3 years, the military situation will be completely different. Russia has the benefit of not having sky-high gas prices right now and a rapidly evolving situation on the battlefield. At this point, we have shipped everything to Ukraine that we possibly could, absent being able to get into an actual war. If they can't get it done with what we've sent, it's not going to happen. Like, let's just be honest here. And so we then need to move things towards a diplomatic situation. And my problem, and we're about to talk about this with Germany, is that there is no appetite in the West for considering the grand strategic picture. We need to align the incentives for President Zelensky to know that he will remain secure in power, that he will remain and continue to have Western aid, and that all of that will be there if he continues with negotiations, frankly, even more. And instead, the opposite incentive is that the more bravado and stuff that they present, the higher the amount of dollars that get sent over to the Ukrainian regime. So we really do need to consider, like, grand strategically what we're trying to do here.
I mean, just to put it really simply and directly, we have higher gas prices.
Yeah.
We have a worldwide hunger crisis caused in part by this war, in part because Russia's unconscionable actions, in part because of our own response. There are a lot of developing world nations that are unable to purchase the grain and fertilizer from Russia that they normally depend on, and are especially depending on now because of our bank sanctions on Russia makes it effectively impossible. So we've got gas crisis, food crisis, Ukraine is losing, and Russia richer than ever. Tell me what part of this policy is working. Tell me what part of the policy is working. I mean, and then to your point, you're like not allowed to say that or people freak out. If you say, hey, we need to figure out how do we get to the negotiation, how do we wrap up this war in the interest of everyone, especially the Ukrainians? You think they want to be at war for 3 years? You think they have time to wait around for the sanctions to start to bite 3 to 5 years from now? I don't think so. So when you say anything that contradicts the mainstream bipartisan consensus of we just need to keep sending in the military and we need to keep trying this economic warfare, which is completely boomeranged. Even the New York Times is admitting it. You get massive backlash, and that just happened in Germany. In pretty interesting instance. Let's go ahead and put this tear sheet up on the screen. So this says Scholz advisor turns heads with appeal to consider the future Russian relationship. That's really all that he said is, hey, maybe we should think about whether we want to make Russia a pariah state. This is my interpretation of his words. I'll tell you his exact words in a minute. And massive backlash. So here's this article. They say German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's top foreign policy aide raised eyebrows Monday night when he suggested Europe should focus more on preserving long-term relations with Russia and less on the specifics of German tank shipments to Ukraine. In a rare public appearance, Jens Plotner, do you think that's how you say it?
I think it's, probably Jens.
Jens, I don't know. A longstanding architect of Berlin's Russia policy argued that the debates over Germany's military support for Ukraine, which is frequently criticized for being too hesitant and slow, were, quote, driven by a feverishness that misses the bigger questions in many cases, no lies detected. Specifically, he pointed to a long-running saga over whether Germany should supply the Ukrainian military with so-called martyr infantry fighting vehicles, which Scholz has so far refused to do. Here's the quote. You can fill a lot of newspaper pages with 20 martyrs, but larger articles about what will actually be our relationship with Russia in the future are somehow less frequent. And that's a question that's at least as exciting and relevant, which could be discussed, and where there could also be a public discourse. He also called for a softer approach toward China and argued Ukraine should not be granted any rebates on its bid to become an EU member just because it was under Russian attack. He said, just because you are under attack, you don't automatically improve on the rule of law. Okay. So he didn't even say, don't send, these martyrs, whatever these things are. He didn't even say, hey, we need to focus on, we need to have détente with Russia, we need to have a warm relationship. He just said, hey, maybe we should be discussing this. Maybe we should be exploring this in some newspaper articles. Massive backlash, had to walk back the comments. There was a whole freak out over it.
With him, and Washington was very upset with him. Here is the basic truth. They have a lot more to lose than us. So maybe we should follow their lead. No, they have, they're like a couple hundred, I think like 1,000 miles or whatever, away from Russia. They fought several wars with Russia. I'm going to presume that they know what's better for their security than we do. Maybe that's a crazy thing. There's a lot of talk of allies and allyship here in the United States. Aren't you supposed to listen to them and be like, what do you guys want? Tell us what it is. Why are we imposing our will on a situation that has negative impact on us, quite literally, whenever it comes to that? Also, the energy situation in Germany is a catastrophe. If you care about the climate, Austria, Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands are resurrecting coal-fired power plants as of right now in order to move towards bringing more energy domestically. So, as a result
stupid as possible
denuclearization and reduced natural gas imports from Russia, Germany and Austria and the Netherlands, Germany being one of the largest, I think the largest economy in continental Europe, is now going to have to produce significantly more coal-fired energy in order to meet their goals, which is terrible for the climate. Also, people don't know this, coal is very expensive. It's actually not cheap anymore compared to many of the other instances or many of the other alternatives. So consider this. People are paying sky-high gas prices, and the energy that they're going to use in order to heat their homes in the middle of the summer, and then come winter, because we all know that that's going to happen, in order to heat their homes in the winter and cool their homes right now is going to be filthy coal-powered energy. So consider the broader impact of that. That is a catastrophe. And listen, the Germans have made a grand strategic decision that they want to continue some sort of commerce relationship with the Russians. I think that is broadly the Germans' business. To the extent that I make fun of them, it's for taking offline their nuclear power plants and for saying that they don't want to do so. So maybe they'll consider some of that. I guess, though, the Greens, if the German Greens don't denounce this more than they denounce nuclear, they're truly full of shit. But whenever you consider the broader implication, we have to have energy here in America. We're going to talk a lot about that today with the gas tax and oil. They need it in Western Europe as well. These are still developing countries, or these are developed economies. They have a certain standard of living in order to meet the most basic baseline. Yeah. And on top of that, you consider, peace between the great powers on the continent.
Yeah.
All of that seems very important. I'm not saying the situation in Ukraine isn't important. We have to take stock of what it all is, what's happening, consider the Ukrainians' interests and ours, and we should never subjugate our own interests under what is for Ukraine
well,
first.
It's not clear to me that the policy we're pursuing is good for it.
Yeah, I don't think it's good for anybody. But I'm saying even if it was, I would still.
It's been good for the Chinese. They're getting a good deal on gas. It's been good for the Indians who are getting a good deal on gas and are able to sell it back at a premium to us. So I can't say it's not been good for everybody. Although, India also one of the countries that will be impacted by the rising price of food. So I mean that's not costless either. But I do want to say one thing about the gas tax holiday that now has been proposed and is being pushed by the Biden administration before we move on here. And Saagar's going to be talking about, we're also going to be talking to Skanda, who's done a lot of thinking about how we could get gas prices under control in a very sort of thoughtful and nuanced way. But Biden has decided to lean into this gas tax holiday idea, which number one is not likely to have much of an impact on what you pay at the pump at all. So it's impotent. Number two is basically a subsidy to the very oil companies that have had these massive record-breaking profits, but the only thing they want to do to it is make rich people even richer. So number two, it's a subsidy to them. And number three, he has to get this through Congress. Congress already said this isn't
it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
On gas tax, yeah.
So what are you doing? I mean, you're proposing this policy that's an impotent subsidy to the oil and gas companies that's not even going to pass. What we're talking about here with Ukraine, while of course Putin's price hike isn't everything that's going on with inflation or with the gas markets, it is true that our ban on Russian oil is certainly having an impact on the cost of gasoline. This is something that is completely in your power. And, he likes to pretend we can't do anything about it, or that if you're arguing against it, you hate Ukraine, when the reality is it has had the polar opposite effect of what was intended. And I just wish they would be honest about that. We tried it, it didn't work, let's try something else. How about that?
I completely agree. I mean, at the very least, give some people some hope somewhere. But if you say that this is all tied up with Ukraine, you're not going to like what the answer to that question is a year from now, whenever you're like, hey, how much longer do you want to pay $5 a gallon at the pump in order to make sure that the border of the Donbass is slightly different than it is than 1 year ago? I mean, these are not questions. We didn't live in democratic societies in World War I, absent the United States. And a lot of those countries found out the hard way in terms of their domestic politics that a lot of people were like, yeah, why are we spending millions of people to die in order to make sure that the French border moves 1,000 feet? These are all questions which have to get democratically resolved. And if you are a supporter of the Ukrainians, the last thing that you probably want is for the U.S. domestic populace to turn against it and just say, you know what, peace at all costs, we don't care anymore. If this is going to be the impact that we have over here. And I very much see that could be the case, both on history and look, it doesn't take a genius politically in order to figure that out.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.